welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown podcast where my two brothers and I discuss video games, new and old. I'm Anthony, and along with my brothers, Pete and Tom, we are hoping for another more lively discussion on new category of games. I say new category of games because the way this show works is that we choose a genre or category of games and select 3 games within that genre or category to discuss. We review the game and all the things that go into discussing video games, like its controls, story, music, gameplay, effect on the gaming world, and more. Once those 3 games are reviewed, 3 games entered into our special Brodown episode, where the 3 games go up against each other, and we declare a winner for that category of games. We are starting a new category this week, and rather than a traditional video game genre, we're trying something a bit different. The next genre we are discussing are games based on 90s cartoons. That's the 1990s. These games are all based on cartoons that debuted or became popular in the 1990s. And the first game that we will be discussing is South Park, The Stick of Truth, which was released for Windows, PS3, and Xbox 360 on March 4th, 2014, and was later released for the PS4 and Xbox One on February 13th, 2018, and finally on the Switch later that year on September 25th. It was developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Ubisoft, with heavy input from South Park writers Trey Parker and Matt Stone. For those of you keeping score, South Park the cartoon debuted on August 13th, 1997. Enter South Park with the famous gang of characters as the new kid, and choose sides in the battle for the powerful Stick of Truth. All right, before we go into everyone's initial thoughts, I just wanted to, right from the outset, say that we're going to try to keep it clean. There's a lot of, for those that know South Park, a lot of, their jokes, maybe offensive to some. So we're going to try not to discuss all the jokes in the game. Focus on mostly all of the things that go into the video game itself. And we might talk some story points towards the end. And to that end, uh, just I'll now mention our spoiler alert. Just if you haven't played the game and are interested in the story, we will likely discuss the story towards the end of the podcast show. So you have some time. We'll try to just discuss some of the other elements early on, but we'll get into some of the story and specific parts later on. All right. Pete, why don't you start us off with some initial thoughts?
Okay. I feel like maybe we should all start off by describing how big of South Park fans we are or aren't. Think Tom and I don't think Aunt you did when it kind of first came out, watched it fairly regularly. Well, I know I did, and then I kind of lost some interest in it, but I classify myself as someone who likes South Park, likes South Park a lot actually, but doesn't watch it or didn't watch it religiously. And I've actually watched it a lot of episodes, only reruns fairly recently. Um, so I'm a pretty decent South Park fan. So that kind of sets the stage for my viewpoints towards the game. And uh, there's a lot of good things and a lot of not so good things about this game. I was very excited to play it. It was on my list for a while in my queue. And so let's leave it at that, and we'll give Tom a chance to give his initial thoughts.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, so similarly, I, started off as a fan of the show back, when it first aired. Watched it for a while, and then like Pete also lost interest. But there have been times throughout the show's, long history that I have been a pretty, weekly viewer of the episodes. Um, I think even like more recently, it's become actually a better show, which is rare for a show that's been on for such a long time. But yeah, I mean, I definitely say that I, appreciate the humor, that the show puts forth, and also about this game specifically is that it's an RPG, and I'm also a big RPG fan. So yeah, I was excited to get my hands on this one too.
All right, and yeah, as far as my level of South Park fandom, um, I too watched it when it first came out. I kind of lost interest, but I from time to time have gone back and watched episodes sort of a la carte, like not on a weekly regular basis or anything like that. But I do think it's a good show. I'm not a religious fan. By that I mean I'm not a fan religiously of watching the show, but but I do think it's a good show, but it's not necessarily my favorite sort of this genre of cartoons, but I definitely can appreciate the humor here. And as far as the game goes, I don't know if I was necessarily excited to play it, but I thought it was a good suggestion when we were discussing categories, uh, both as part of this category and just as a game in general. And Yeah, it had definitely a lot of interesting elements. As we'll get into, it's very true to the show and the characters, so that was really good too. Um, all right, so we mentioned we'll discuss the plot later, but why don't we first discuss just sort of the aesthetic and the overall um, look of the game? Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think we probably all can agree that it very closely captured the visual aesthetic of the cartoon, which was great to see. Um,
Yeah, especially considering that like prior South Park games, they kind of tried to go with like 3D and stuff, and it just, it certainly didn't look like South Park. And here you had the sort of the 2D cardboard cutout images, which was just like the show.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. And it was also really cool just to see, the character, the kid that you create, his appearance. And he's in sort of like the animation and the cutscenes and everything. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it basically looks like a South Park episode. Like there's really no difference
Yeah,
between the
100%. If
between the
somebody walks, sorry, if somebody walked in on you playing the game, they would think you were watching an episode of South Park
yeah.
just by the look of it
Yeah, that
and
that
the
actually
sound.
yeah, that actually happened to me. So it's yeah, I mean, it's flowed perfectly between the cutscenes and regular walking around and your own battle scenes. Really, there was no, so often you'll see games where the cutscenes are like this amazing sort of looks like a movie, and then like the actual game is like, so. But here, everything looked pretty much the same. And the other thing I liked sort of was it was kind of cool to be able to walk around South Park, so to speak, and like you see how everything looked and what stores were next to each other and what houses were next to each other.
yeah, it was definitely cool. And I'm sure this is going to be a theme throughout the episode, I'm sure, but just how they were able to, put so much familiar aspects of the show into the game. Like there was all the familiar characters, like even the minor characters. Like you have the like Officer Barbrady and yeah, Mr. Hanky and like, everything like that.
Yeah.
And like the buildings, like they had like the city hall where the mayor was and the church and just yeah,
Yeah.
so much stuff.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of like fanfare.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And all the characters there, but it was sort of like, this game came out like when South Park first started, there was less characters, and now there's a lot within that gang of friends that were all there too, like Butters and I'm not as familiar, but like Clyde and
Yeah.
you know, was it
Yeah.
Tweak and so it was fun though. That was definitely fun. But yeah, the look is, I mean, you really can't do better, I don't think, in this type of game.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so why don't we discuss like gameplay and we could add controls into that. But Tom had mentioned in his intro that this is an RPG game. So that's the main gameplay element here. So what did you guys think of that as far as just as a choice by the developers, but also how they handled that choice?
So I feel like they made it kind of accessible. Like it's not. it's an RPG, but there's not so much depth to it. Um, like a very overly complicated RPG. And I think that was probably a good choice considering that, you want this to appeal to fans of the show, and you know, fans of the show are not necessarily all going to be fans of RPGs. So
Right.
to make it more like an entry level RPG, I feel like that was a smart move.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good way to describe it. Like sort of like entry level.
yeah, but also, I mean, I feel like that led to some issues with the game.
Like what?
Well, I mean, if you go in expecting it to be like, you just have to go in with the right expectations, I guess is what I'm getting at. You can't expect it to be
Complicated?
Like a Final Fantasy 7 or, you know,
8.
yeah, exactly.
Like you're not building trees of like powers and statuses and all of that.
Yeah. I mean,
So you can
they
add
had,
like yeah.
yeah.
But
One thing I did like was, they had the weapon attachments and the,
right. The
well, the,
strap-ons?
the strap-ons. Yeah. Yeah. And the, for your armor too. And you can create some combinations there. Like you could equip a weapon that does burn damage, and then you could have you can equip a strap on that increases your fire damage or something.
Right.
So like you
Yeah.
could make some interesting combinations there.
Yeah, there was some customization and there was a lot of weapons and armors, all sort of harkening back to jokes in the show and all of that. Pete, what'd you think
Yeah,
of like that part of it?
yeah. So basically, right, you just as you battle and gain experience, I guess you increase in level, and the higher the level, then uh the more access or the access you had to more of these equipments, like the helmets and the swords and whatever else.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was basically right. The all those items had a level associated with them that
yeah. Level requirement.
you couldn't equip them unless you reached that level.
Yeah,
That was basically the uh, upgrade system, if you will.
Yeah.
It was quite
I-
simple.
yeah,
Right, that's the upgrades, but as far as like they really tried to get in that RPG world and also almost poke fun of that RPG world. Like there's like for example and like there's the summoning and which was also sort of like funny but also a cool harkening back to RPGs but was a way for them to add other characters into the game. So um once you sort of like defeated or beat a certain part of the game, you would get different summons, which anyone who plays RPGs knows that summoning is a big part of that, especially in mainline Final Fantasy and all of that. So it's cool, and that was there's a mission where you help Mr. Henke find his kids. He then becomes a summon. There's the Mr. Kim from City Walk. He becomes a summon.
Jesus, I think he was the first
Yeah,
one I
yeah.
got.
Jesus, you do like a mission in the church, I think, and he becomes a summon.
yeah,
The game's broken up into days, and they only help you once per day, and not against bosses. But
Yeah, and it's basically like an auto
yeah.
win if
win,
you use
yeah,
them.
yeah. But it's it's pretty
Did
funny.
you
So
guys like find yourself ever having to use them?
no,
I
I
Right?
used one. I think it was Mr. Slave. I used him once, and
Mr. Slave, yeah,
then I was just like,
Yeah.
I kind of I almost didn't want to use him just because it felt so cheap.
Yeah.
I didn't
I
use it
used
for that.
cheese
I
I used
I
Jesus once just to like see it.
I I did the thing that I and others often do in video games. Like I just kept saving them, saving them, and then didn't like ever have the opportunity to use them. So it was,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I used one.
The fact that it was made very apparent that you couldn't use them against bosses made me not feel like I needed to save them, you know?
Yeah.
But I also just never really ran into a situation where I needed to use them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that kind of brings
But
one of the issues of the game is pretty easy.
It is pretty easy. I think they had different difficulty levels. Anyone
Uh,
recall?
I never even look when I start these games. I just start on the default and play on the default. But
Yeah.
it's probably true that there's different difficulties.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because you don't know that going in. So, yeah, like, you don't know that the game is going to be so easy on the default setting. So,
Yeah, right.
you know,
Exactly.
you're not going to play through the whole game and be like, oh, that was easy. Let me replay it on hard.
Yeah.
Eh,
That's,
so, all right. I kind of want to stay within that gameplay category, but I mean, I think there are things to discuss as far as,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
there's other
what,
cool RPG elements that we can get into.
yeah, go into those.
Yeah. So, I mean, just they had like the perk system where that was as you collect friends, Facebook, well, I guess it was Facebook friends, right?
Yeah, it was Facebook friends because that was like sort of your character's big thing that you're able to make Facebook friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was like another kind of collecting aspect of the game and side quests and stuff. Um, but yeah, so like as you gained more friends, you were able to unlock these perks, um, perk upgrades, I guess, that give you various battle. Like, yeah, I think they were all related to combat, but the combat upgrades, like
Yeah, well, in that vein, there's also another. So, like, along with your like physical attacks and you had special moves, which were, per character, and then you also had like the various farting abilities that were you could use either in battle, and you had to sometimes use them otherwise for like other sort of
the
in-game missions.
magic.
Yeah, yeah, that was basically like your magic, if it was a more traditional RPG.
Yeah, and just like mentioned, there's a lot of side quests that you can do.
Yeah,
A lot of them spanned multiple days, which was cool. So it's not
yeah.
just like you get a quest and then you immediately finish it.
I was gonna save that for the replay section of the discussion so that we could have a fight about it, but I guess we could talk about it here. It's
I'll
fine.
save that for the bro down.
I feel like the side quests made up the majority of the game. Like I don't know. I feel like more than 50% of the game was side quests.
I don't know about that much.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot to do, which is
Yeah.
not a bad thing. And
Yeah.
that I feel like that could have possibly been why the game was like really easy for us. I mean, at least partially responsible. I think it was an easy game just in general, but as you do side quests, you level up and you get better equipment and things like that. Thus making the main story, easier because you have these upgrades and higher
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in other games, RPG games like Final Fantasy, do you feel like if you're doing all the side quests, then that you're growing levels at such a rate where the regular story is or the main story is becoming easy?
Well, easier, not like
Eh, I guess.
Yeah, because doesn't some RPGs like scale with your level regardless of when you go to that level if it's more open world, right, Tom? I mean, you're sort of like the RPG person, and others it's just like that level is at that point in the game, so it's gonna be like
This
that
level of
easy or
difficulty. Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know how many games actually scale.
Mm.
But so on the kind of this topic, one thing I liked about the game is that there was really no like grinding or training, like random encounters.
Yeah, I mean, there were some random encounters, like when you're in the sewers, like some of the rats. I think you can maybe avoid them,
Yeah.
but for the most part, yeah, it wasn't completely random, and there's definitely no grinding, but I feel like that kind of lends itself to the brevity of the game and just like maybe to an extent the easiness of the game because that's
Yeah,
sort of a hallmark of a lot of RPGs is like having to
there
grind
was
at least a little bit.
there was no reason to grind because it was
Yeah.
so easy.
I mean, they sort of made up for that with all the collectibles they did and all the side quests they did. So it's, it still had, value to keep playing it, but not necessarily for grinding. Just for the listeners, I mean, just as far as like the basic gameplay, you are your character and one of the South Park gang. And this is, again, spoiler alert, it's just briefly touching on the very sort of you know 10,000 foot view of the story, but it starts off with like Cartman and Butters on one side, the human faction versus like Kyle and Stan and their group, which are the elves faction. So they really also, along with all of like the poking fun at RPGs, they kind of also went into poking fun in that respect, where it's like, this Lord of the Rings sort of world where there's elves and humans and all of these different like classes of characters and all of that. So anyway, so your character and one, you start off on one side and you could switch or stay on that side as the game progresses. So it's you and one other character, and each of them have their own classes and set of moves that they do. So you know I'd be interested just to, just as a bit of a non sequitur. What was your guys' favorite like supporting character?
Mine was Stan. I
Okay.
feel like he was just strong overall. Like he was able to and like his attacks could hit multiple enemies sometimes, so that was helpful.
Yeah. I like Butters because I my I he had a hammer, so it was supposed to be like Thor, I guess, but it was also like I liked his Professor Chaos move because it was like it did a random wheel and then was like, would do different moves depending on what the wheel landed on. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, one time I used that and I got the one where it gives you a shield and it was just like impenetrable.
That's funny because those were my two favorite supporting characters,
Oh,
Dan
okay.
and
Yeah.
Butters. I found them to
What?
be the most useful.
Yeah. Kyle was funny because he had the one where he could kick his brother. Why am I forgetting his brother's name?
Ike.
Ike, yeah, yeah. And like
Yeah.
that was funny. And then Cartman I
Jimmy.
Cartman I didn't use much. Jimmy was the bard, so it was sort of like
Yeah.
he would use songs to like power you up I mean the songs were, funny yet offensive yet funny, but like but I didn't find him as fun to use.
Yeah, and some of the songs took too long to like the abilities were just they took too long to use and it was
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah. So that's something we didn't mention. For anyone who hasn't played the game, when you do some abilities, you kind of, yeah, each ability is different, but you kind of time and press a button at the correct time and it'll do extra damage or something.
Right.
Kind of like Paper Mario, if anyone's
Yeah.
ever played that.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. That's definitely part of the gameplay, and that also works defensively too. When you're about to get hit, if you press the button at the right time, you kind of take less damage.
Not true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. They have like this, so it's like turn-based, but there's this interactive component to it, so that you're not just like pressing a button and watching the moves play out.
Right. It's primarily move turn-based, but they added this little bit in that to keep you sort of engaged after choosing what move you wanted to do. So that I like that. And then of course, just in RPG fashion, it had, you know, potions and, mana, the equivalent of mana uh, buffs and replenishes and things like that you could use items for. They were like in the form of like food that I guess was,
Cheesy poofs.
yeah, and stuff like that was on the show that to so that was also fun.
Yeah, lots of references to the show. Even like the junk items. It was like just so like obscure too. Like
Yeah,
items that were in one episode would be in the game.
yeah, there really was a ton. Like they really added so much from the show.
Yeah. The reference, of course, is cool. And I didn't like just how much junk you were collecting, and it was like all pretty much useless. I mean, you could
Yeah,
sell it, but
yeah, and sometimes you had to put it like away.
yeah.
Like you couldn't even take it. Like it was so you had so much.
Yeah. Well, those were the consumables
Yeah, just the items.
that you could max out. The junk was on,
Yeah.
there was no limit.
Yeah, I
But
guess
so
the only point of that was to sell, and
yeah,
you never really ran out of items, so you didn't ever really need to sell or buy anything.
yeah. So I did buy some like you know cheesy poos like potions or something like a
Yeah. I
few, but
think
I
I had
didn't
to buy
sell
those
one.
too.
I didn't sell one bit of junk. So like that's a kind of another thing that goes to the easiness of the game.
Mm.
It's just I never had to sell anything to make sure I bought the strongest item or you know replenished potions and things. Now, so one thing you talked about the mana, like the
The
or the
PP.
PP and the HP, like it would restore after each battle, right?
I don't recall specifically, but if that's what
The,
you're saying, I believe
yeah,
you.
the HP and PP did.
Yeah.
The magic didn't. The mana.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I almost never use the mana, like the farting attacks
Yeah,
in battle.
same
Yeah,
here.
same.
Yeah,
I use the health obviously, but then also the PP for like their
yeah,
special moves,
yeah,
but
yeah.
not the. Yeah, no, same here. Um, that might have been a function of like, I mean, I wasn't a mage. Maybe if you were using Cartman more, that would have been more useful. Though he had his regular like PP moves were fine. The thing that was cool about this is that you can use like not only the farting, but like just interact with the backgrounds and the scenery and the levels as you were walking around. So you could like hit the mailbox and items would come out, or sometimes you had to do it like where you use one of your abilities within the level to reach like a platform that you wouldn't otherwise be able to reach, that you needed to get
Yeah.
to. So,
Yeah. So like at the end of each day, you get this new ability that you can use in the world, like outside of battle.
yeah, there
You
was
know,
like the teleporting one. There was the shrinking down to the what were those gnomes or elves or something they were supposed to be.
the gnomes.
Gnomes, yeah. So that was also fun to be able to just interact with the levels like that.
Yeah, and there are portions of the game where you have to kind of backtrack, and once you unlock these new abilities, you can then explore new areas, which
Yeah.
helps in the side quests and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was cool that they had Matt Stone and Trey Parker because they were able to situate South Park as it was situated. So, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, you're visiting all of the places from the show and where they are in proximity and in relation to each other. So, that just really added an element to the gameplay that was really fun. It's fun. It was almost fun just to walk around and see what South Park looked like, and they make it funny too because you're walking and there's like people on the street and they randomly say stupid things, and it's
Yeah,
just fun.
yeah. Apparently, they were very heavily involved in the game. The two creators of South Park.
Yeah, I heard they were very unhappy with prior South Park games, and that probably is one of the
For
things that led them to being involved so much.
Yeah, and for good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have two things on what was just said. First, it was fun walking around South Park, but it could have gotten a little tiresome and tedious. So it was really nice. I don't know how often you use the Timmy Express points
A
with
lot.
the flags. Yeah, I used it a lot too. Without those, it would have been a little
Yeah.
annoying
Yeah,
navigating.
definitely. But I actually almost wish they would have even went further and just like allowed you to teleport to like a specific building. Like you had to find the like flags where it was almost like a bus stop. So
Yeah, but there were a lot. I think there were over 10.
yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
it was pretty quick to get through. It wasn't that large
yeah.
town.
yeah, but if you're going from one end to the other, it,
Or
it
going
was
to Canada.
yeah, yeah. And then so you're talking about the involvement of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. So there's someone, one of the software developers who like went to social media and he was talking about like their involvement. And I guess there were a lot of things that were in the game that were basically all like written up and done and developed. And then Trey or Matt or both they like wanted it cut. And basically it's like, they would see it all the time and then I guess they would decide like, oh, this actually isn't funny anymore kind of thing. But like they were, it was just different from like the cartoon where the cartoon they basically write it in a week and then it's out. Whereas, you know, for the game they might be sitting on a joke for
Yeah.
weeks and months and maybe to them it got stale, but to someone playing it for the first time it would have been good.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so there was just real quick, there was like a few things that he cited that got removed. Um, I guess one part with the goth kids, they were going to go to the cemetery and like Michael Jackson was involved somehow. Um, and there was a Christmas town north of Canada that got cut. And then there was like some like side thing where like a faction of the girls were like Paris Hilton fans. Um, and then like Paris Hilton was going to be a boss or something. But so anyway, those are some things that got cut.
All right, any more on gameplay? What?
Yeah, so I want to talk about a couple of parts of the game that I thought were actually hard. So the first one, there was one fight against Al Gore in his storage locker that I thought was pretty difficult. Did anyone else find any of the Al Gore fights somewhat?
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that being not easy.
Yeah, I might have taken that on too early.
Hello, young Algorian.
It was funny when he keeps spamming messages to you on Facebook. You
Yeah.
have to
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
block him. It was funny, but also the when you're learning the magic, like the farts from Cartman and Randy and Terrence and
Randy.
Phillip,
Yeah, yeah.
I felt like those were the hardest parts for me because I didn't like they didn't do a great job at explaining like exactly how to pull off the maneuver. So I found myself kind of struggling a little bit to on those parts, even though, and it was just kind of annoying because then they would be like, no, no, not like that. Let me show you again. And then you have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep watching them do it. And, with the same lacking description.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I noted that the hardest part of the game for me was like
Yeah.
specifically the one when Randy was teaching you in the bathroom. I think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was that the sneaky squeaker or
Yes,
something.
that one was tough because you like kind of like throw it and it goes like behind the person
Yeah.
and yeah.
But like that was the only time, even if you did use it, like uh
Well,
to yeah.
you needed to use it outside of battle.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
all, so you did need it.
Yeah, that's something we should talk about in general. But when you, just to finish this thought, when you used it outside of battle, it was not as difficult as it was in the training session.
Yeah, yeah. That goes for all
Like it
of
wasn't
them.
the same
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
mechanic. Just silly.
Well, it might just go to the easiness of like they didn't want to overburden you during the actual game. I don't know.
Yeah, but why make it hard in the train?
Yeah,
Just
they
make
should have
it
just made
like
it like,
whatever it is. It's so
yeah.
silly. So yeah, there were like these farting techniques, but also some of the uh support characters had different abilities to use outside of battle to kind of progress through.
Oh, yeah. Those were kind of, I feel like they were kind of lame just because they would make it so obvious when you needed to
Yeah.
use it. Like they would kind of like kneel over or whatever supporting character it was.
Yeah. So Butters could heal. So there was a couple of, or at least one instance where like
Yeah.
you had to heal someone who was injured. Princess Kenny would distract
Yes.
the enemies by lifting up his shirt. And I don't know if there's more. I'm
There's one with
forget.
Jimmy with the handicap. Like he was able to get into like the handicaps to get into the school when you're by like the goth kids in the back.
Oh,
Oh,
I don't even remember that.
wait, what's the name of the character that played the bard?
Yeah, it's Jimmy.
Oh, that's Jimmy. And then Timmy's the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then you also get like one of your items, or it might be a bow or something, and you could use that outside of battle to like maybe hit something on the ceiling and it'll fall down on an enemy or something like that,
Right, right.
right?
And,
Yeah.
and I think you could use that to get some of the chin Pokemon collectibles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
best part of the game. Whenever you got a chimp Pokemon and then like the little music
Yeah,
sounds
yeah. I was
came
like,
on.
chin Pokemon.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Like that.
When we just finished our Pokemon category, so go back and check that out wherever you get your podcast if you haven't yet.
Did you guys? This was probably just from the show, but there was one gym Pokemon that was called Shoe, I think, and it just looked like a shoe.
I'm sure it was from the show. But
Yeah. I thought that was hilarious.
I didn't get that one.
I think that was near the end in Clyde's Tower, maybe.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I didn't get all of those.
Yeah, either did I. And there's some where, and this was the case for Friends too, where you only had a one chance to get them, and if you kind of progress past that part of the game, then like
Mm,
which kind of stinks.
yeah,
Yeah.
that does. Um, just since we're in the gameplay section, I just wanted to point it. So we mentioned that it looks like a South Park episode. It's 2D. You have your walking through town, and then you get into battles. There is a part of the game where you do go to Canada, which is just north of South Park in this world. Even though South Park's like in Colorado, right? Like it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I mean that's obviously a funny, little thing. But um the gameplay switches a little bit where it's like still RPG, but it's like that over the top overhead, let me say, not over the top because that implies something different, but it's overhead, almost like an old
Yeah, the world map in like a Zelda game or
like a
something.
yeah.
Zelda.
Like
Yeah,
like an
exactly.
8-bit or
Yeah, exactly. So
something like
that
that.
that I found funny too because it's just like they're always poking fun at Canada in the show, and it's sort of like, they made it into this like less aesthetically pleasing and more basic version of the main game. So, but still in that RPG world. So I thought that was kind of funny. Though the cutscenes were like regular cutscenes, but like just the gameplay of the overworld map was different.
Yeah, that's actually in Canada was one of the examples where if you miss out on making a friend there, if you remember the Bishop of Banff,
Mm-hmm.
you had like the decision to like kill him or not.
Oh, right.
So if you spared his life, then he
He
becomes your
becomes your
friend dot.
friend.
But if not, obviously you can't get that one.
I'm glad we said spoiler alert.
Yeah, I actually missed one. There's one side quest in the whole game that I missed, and it was from the detective in the police station, the guy with the orange hair.
I don't remember. I don't think I got
It,
that.
like behind bars, like
No, 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 he's the detective. He's the guy who went nice.
okay, well, what was the side quest? Because I remember there
I
was
don't know.
the
I can't
kid.
do it.
There was a kid behind the bars. Then you have to like
Yeah, that
find the
that
kid.
one that one I did, but
Hmm.
no, for this guy, it was like after the first day. So like I hadn't, or it was after that part that you have to do in the police station, which is where you encounter that kid who's locked up.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, so like I didn't go back in the police station because I thought like I was done with it or whatever.
Mm.
But as it turns out, he gives you a quest on whatever it is, the second or third day. But I think if you progress too far, you get locked out because I think the police station, as part of the story, something happens to it where that makes it inaccessible, basically, to keep it spoiler free.
We could just say spoiler alert and then you could say it. Does it get destroyed? We'll wait to the end. Um, all right. Any other gameplay sort of discussion you guys wanted to bring up? I think we covered a lot of it, but if there's anything else that I'm forgetting, let us know.
Just one other minor point that I found annoying was there a couple of times throughout the game where you basically have all your armor unequipped. Like, so for example, the first day when you go to sleep, you're in your pajamas, but then you end up waking up as part of the story and doing something else.
Mhm.
Um, and you stay in your pajamas, so you have to re-equip all your stuff, or else your armor is like nothing.
Yeah, that's annoying, but I felt they made it easy. I like just being a more basic RPG. I kind of just went with like the best leveled of everything, and that was kind of easy to get through, I feel.
Yeah, it was just annoying to have to go through the inventory and
Yeah.
equip all this stuff again.
Yeah, they should have had like some games, and then it's not even just RPGs, like even like Assassin's Creeds and those type of games where it's like you can just like click a button and it equips like all your best stuff. And for a game like this, that would have been like, easy and probably the preferred way to go. Unless, so the thing with the equipments though, and this, I don't know if you call it gameplay or something else, but like your character is very customizable. Um, so there might have been people who kind of wanted to play with a particular look of the character, even if it wasn't the strongest, weapon or armor. So, I could see people like, caring about that in this type of game since A, it wasn't that hard, and B, it's from South Park, and people that are big fans, they may have had a particular episode or look that they were going for and just wanted to see as they were playing the game. So, uh, you know, but that was cool too, that your character is that customizable.
Yeah, Tom. So I was just going back. I looked at the list of the side quests, and I think I didn't do that one either. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
man, I
yeah,
thought I did all of them.
it was kind of hidden. Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
Do you
after
know what you have to do in it?
I'm not sure. After you finish the game, after I finished the game, I went online and looked up a list of the side quests and compared them to, because you could view all the quests you did in the game's menu. Yeah, so I went through one by one, and then I realized I missed that one. So I looked up, where it was, and that's how
You
I
have
came
to
to the
kill.
conclusion.
You have to like kill certain types of zombies and then collect their rings.
Gotcha.
Certain types.
Yes. Don't want
Um,
to spoil it for those who haven't who haven't played it yet.
there are zombies though, apparently.
Certain types of zombies.
Certain types of blanks. We're like 40 minutes in. It's fine. And must have said spoiler alert at least 5 times. Um, so the audio, we'll just could just briefly talk about that. It's very sort of near and dear to the episodes, like the little sort of flourishes in there, the character voices, also all sound very on point.
I
And
like the music too. Like it had like the kind of whimsical medieval
RPG, yeah,
sounding. Yeah. And I thought, whatever original score they made for those parts was actually like fitting and well done.
yeah. Again, I felt like everything was sort of like tongue in cheek, sort of making fun of RPGs, but yeah, no, that you need to do that then, and they definitely did as far as like all of the elements that go into that. Yeah, just to kind of go back to gameplay for a second, and this will probably be discussed more in like when we talk about the story and everything, but it was interesting in the fact that like so the main setup is like all the kids are playing this like RPG, like but in real life. Like then it's not a video game, it's not a card game. Like they're playing in their, school and society and everything. But it's like they're acting it out, but they're not really,
It's like
you know,
LARPing.
is that what, yeah. So it's like, it's like I hit you with my sword, and then it's like, but they're not really beating each other up though. So when you're walking in society, you're not, or the levels, you're not really hurting each other. But like when it goes to the battle, like graphically, they're presenting it as like an actual RPG where you're stabbing someone or hitting them with magic or whatever. So like you kind of think that that's how the whole game's going to be, but then it starts involving all of these other characters that are, clearly not the children playing the game, and yet you're kind of like fighting them too as part of the game. So it's obviously it's like it's South Park, so it's like they always do things like that, but it's that's part of the gameplay where it's like not, yeah, if you're just sort of set up thinking that okay, all the kids are in on this, and then this is just the graphical representation of it to the game player, but then it includes all these other characters where it's like, okay, is this actually happening?
Yeah, which is
Which is like a
very much
joke.
like an episode
Yeah, yeah.
would like an episode would be of the show.
All right, so I'm, I really, really do want to save the story to the end, so I'm, trying to see what else we could discuss here. We discussed the gameplay, the graphics, a little bit on the audio there. Um, we touched on replay value earlier on, sort of facetiously as part of the gameplay. This game to
Well, so
me, go ahead.
one thing that we didn't actually mention yet, which you can get some replay value from, is that you play as one of what, four distinct classes?
Yeah, and we won't name them so that the users can, try that out on their own. But yeah,
Yeah, but so I mean, just anyway, they all have different abilities.
Yeah, they all have different abilities, so you can try them out that way. Um,
And there are actually
and
some trophies or achievements that you can only get playing as certain classes. So.
that is true. So it's funny you said. Speaking, we haven't touched on replay value when I was just about to go into the replay value category, but
Oh,
so so
well, that's part of gameplay too.
yeah, yeah. I think it does have replay value because there are side quests which to me go into a replay value because you don't have to play them, and they
I
and
think there is zero replay value in this game.
no, well, what Tom just mentioned is a good point,
Okay,
and
that's true,
also
I guess.
while it doesn't change the story much. All right, and I'm just gonna say spoiler, and this is bleeding into story a little bit,
For the
but
10th time.
you start off in Cartman's camp, and then there's an opportunity to switch to the elves, to Kyle and Stan's camp. And you could either do that or choose to stay in Cartman's. Eventually, by the, 3/4 to the end of the game, you're all on the same team against another character, which we'll discuss and like other characters. But I feel like that adds an element of replay value where you could, stay on Cartman's team throughout, or go to Kyle's team, and I think you could actually even switch back at one point. Or but whatever, you could at least make the switch and then stay on Kyle's team the rest of the time. So there's replay value. I think Tom's point about the class of character that you are adds to some of the replay value. And to me, going in and collecting things that you don't have to, the chin Pokemon, the doing the side quests, to me that's replay value because you don't really have to do it to beat the game.
Yeah, I could see that. You play it through once and then you want to go back and play it again and collect everything. See, the problem is you have to play it again. You can't go back and collect whatever you missed because some of the things, once you miss them, they're gone forever.
Yeah, I mean it depends. Like if you want to do like the Jimbo's hunting one, like that stays there. Like that side quest.
Yeah, yeah. But so we
Yeah, if you
mentioned some
want
of
to
the
plat
some of
if
the
you want
side quests were
to
gone. Some of the
yeah,
friends are gone. Some of the Chim Pokemon are gone
if
for
you want
good.
to platinum the game, speaking from a PlayStation user perspective, then yeah. Oh, we didn't say at the beginning what we played this on. Not that it's really that much of a difference because it's gonna. But I played the PS4 version, I guess, on my PS5.
I did the same.
I bought it on my Xbox, so I guess that's what the Xbox One version.
Yeah. Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, we can continue arguing
So
about
no one played
replay
on
value.
Switch, so everyone had replay value because they had achievements or trophies to collect.
No.
No,
And
I
one thing
just
to
find.
note though is that this
Go
was
ahead.
actually first released on PS3, right? And
Yeah,
Xbox 360.
correct.
And then they ported it to PS4 and Xbox One.
Yeah, after South Park, The Fractured But Whole came out, I think they then ported this to PS4 and Xbox One, and
Yeah.
then it just became available through the, backwards compatibility on the
Yeah.
current generations
Right.
of those
But
two
so this is
consoles.
pretty old game. Like, that's now 2 generations ago that it came out. And we're essentially playing that version since it was just a port, right?
Yeah, it was the 2014 it came early 2014, March.
Yeah.
First quarter 2014. So we're going on 10 years.
Yeah.
Past 10 years.
I think it held up pretty well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it did. I didn't feel like I wasn't like I didn't feel like I was playing an outdated game,
No.
honestly.
But you guys didn't. So, what are your thoughts on the replay value? Am I wrong with what I'm defining replay value as?
I don't think you're wrong. And this is just my opinion though. The most fun or the most fun part of the game was sort of just the story and the jokes.
Yeah,
And so once you play through it, once you know all that, I guess it's like maybe an episode where you go watch a rerun and still enjoy it.
exactly. I mean, it's. I was just gonna say that it's like people watch reruns of their favorite shows and still enjoy it. I mean, I guess it doesn't hit as it does the initial time, but it, you know,
I think it would still be funny playing it again. Like, maybe not playing it like, a week after you beat it the first time. But if you go back, I don't know, a month or two later, I feel like you're still gonna be laughing at a lot of the jokes. Assuming that you find this kind of humor funny.
Yeah, I mean, I played this a more that further ago than I don't know what I'm saying, but like longer ago. There we go. Than you guys did, and so I went back and watched the. They have some like YouTube compilations of just the like cutscenes and some of like the major fight scenes that lead into cutscenes. And I was watching that, and I still found the funny parts funny.
What were some of the funny parts?
Well, I'll go first because so one of the ones that stuck out to me and again I'm gonna try to keep this more on the maybe stuff that universally would be funny as opposed to people that particularly like the humor of South Park, but or at least I am. But I really like the part where you have to sort of enlist the goth kids to be part of your faction, and they really play on the fact that the goth kids are really not as nonconformist as they believe they are. And that's sort of the whole joke and commentary that they make. But one of the funny lines is like, they want your character to change into clothes that looks just like them. So they say, if you want to prove that you're not a conformist, then you have to look exactly like we do. So I found that very, very biting and funny.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, that was
Yeah,
funny.
that was probably my favorite line in the whole game.
Oh man, I stole it from you.
My favorite line, and a little spoiler alert in here, so cover your ears if you don't want to hear any bit of the story. But when you're in the alien spaceship and you're being probed and Randy's being probed, and then Randy tells you that like living in a quiet mountain town, you have to put up with things like alien probings, but at least you don't have to deal with things like traffic.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's something somebody would say who's living in a South Park, Colorado.
Tom?
I didn't note any of them like verbatim, so I don't really want to butcher any of the lines. But those are two good ones.
All right.
There's also one other one I wanted to mention. I don't know if you guys remember this. Well, actually, there's two. One of them is real quick. It's just from the show. When you go in the movie theater, you could hear like the movie. I guess it's like previews, and it goes,
The Rob
"Rob
Schneider.
Schneider is a carrot or a
Yeah,
stapler."
yeah.
That was always hilarious from the show. So
I like, it's funny you mentioned the movie theater because I just like when you walk by this people aren't gonna find funny, but I guess when it came out of the blue, it was funny. It's like as I mentioned earlier, you walk by characters and they'll say certain things, and he's like a very nerdy. He almost sort of reminds me of the character from, and I'll mention another cartoon, The Simpsons, where it's like the nerdy kid with all the pimples, and he just talks like
pimply
with a
face teen.
yeah, pimply face teen. And like so anyway, you're in the movie theater and he's in the ticket like box outside and he goes, I was like your age a million years ago. It's like I don't know why that was so funny, but I really burst out laughing when he said that.
Yeah, there's a lot of just random things. There's something for everybody,
Yeah.
something that you find funny, maybe someone else doesn't, vice versa. But anyway, the other joke was also in the spaceship, and there's like these audio logs, and
Yeah,
basically
Oh,
that was
that was
fun.
I have that
they're
written down too.
yeah, they're making fun of like the
How
audio log
pointless it is.
system of storytelling in video games.
Yeah, yeah. And it was just so funny though what they did because it was like obviously these are really tense moments and it's like how do I have time to say this all in an audio log? It's
Yeah,
like oh man, that I have that written down too. Okay, we might as well just talk about them.
yeah, exactly.
So I really like it's very early in the game where like Cartman's giving commands to like all of the people on his team and Clyde goes aye aye and Cartman goes aye aye. We're not playing pirates, Clyde. And then I like when you first go to find Tweak, and his parents run the coffee shop, which is obviously like sort of making fun of, I guess, like the obsession with coffee and like or Starbucks or whatever. And the dad, who's like sort of like has this like calming voice, he goes, "It's local coffee. brewed locally.
Yeah, that one I don't remember, but
So those are mine. Those are all the ones I
There was another joke about with the coffee about hipsters. I don't remember it exactly, but it was
was funny.
something like that. Yeah.
All right. Any other jokes that we can talk about that we would say?
I said the ones that I've noted. There are obviously some other ones that were maybe not as clean that we won't share, but maybe people in the audience will want to go play the game to hear.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good time to just bring up the topic of censorship. So the North American one was not censored. But I guess in Australia and Europe, there were certain scenes. I mentioned the alien probing, so that was one, and some other stuff that were kind of censored, and then they were just like replaced with pictures of like Australia was a koala crying, and
Instead of the probing?
yeah, like if there was like cutscenes or whatever, it was like
Oh.
basically just like a still screen, and then I think it described maybe what was happening or something like
Oh,
in
boy.
words. And then the European version was like like a statue, like a statue of David, kind of, with his like palm to his face. Um, and then in Germany, the German version, they I think they had maybe had those same censorships, but then additionally for anything that had that particular type of zombie that I was talking about earlier.
Well, we could say that. I mean, so the there's like the
Spoiler
main
alert.
yeah, spoiler alert. The main villains uh, that you fight, especially later in the game, are Nazi zombies. So it's sort of making fun of the fact that there's so many movies and games where the villains are Nazis or zombies. So it kind of, they decided to just throw it together. I was obviously sort of, making, I guess, like a commentary on how easy it is to just throw either one of those two things as villains in any sort of media. So anyway, so that was now
Yes.
we could say that.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
so
so
yeah, I
anyway,
think
so wherever there was like a Nazi symbol or gesture or something that was just covered up, like with a black box or a line or something.
yeah, I think Germany does, because of its past, does have laws against sort of Nazi paraphernalia and things like that. So
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what I had on the censorship.
Yeah, I mean, even playing through this game now in this day and age, it seems just like so like wild that this was even allowed to be made. Some of the things in the game are just pretty crazy that you'll have to find out for yourself.
Yeah. So
anyway,
so one other thing, very minor on the gameplay, going back to that, like there were these parts, like we were talking about the goth, where like it was like sort of like a rhythm, like music game where you had to like press certain buttons as they scroll down the screen. There was also some instances where it was like that Simon type memory game
yeah, that
when
was
you're on
like
the
what
alien
Oh
spaceship. Like those were
yeah,
like so minor and kind of like I don't know.
it was
yeah,
funny. Like the last one,
it was
they made it like
impossible.
impossible,
Yeah,
so that you have to.
yeah,
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to fail. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It was fun.
All right, are we ready to discuss some of the story or
Yes, but first, let's go to our mid-episode filler. All right, so for this week's mid-episode filler, we are discussing quotes from the South Park The Stick of Truth game. And we just mentioned a few of them in the last segment of the show, and we wanted to pick 3 of them, put it up to a poll, and see what the listeners like. And of course, if you like a different one, throw it up there at our social media, and we'll look at that and read it out. Before we get started with the question, visit us at our social media on X or Instagram at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. You can visit our website at brothersandbossbattles.com or anywhere you get this podcast. All right. So this game is obviously South Park. It's very funny. It at least in our opinions, Matt Stone and Trey Parker had a big hand in writing this, so it's all very true to South Park. And we just discussed a few, as I just mentioned, and we'd like to know, what is your favorite quote out of these three? First, there's the section where Randy and your character are about to be probed by aliens on the alien ship, and Randy says this to your character: "Is this your first time getting probed? Yeah, it's a pain, but this is the kind of stuff you put up with living in a remote little mountain town. At least we don't have to deal with traffic." Also, on that alien ship, you find audio logs from an unnamed character, and one of them goes like this: "So hungry. I've searched for food, but the only thing I found are other people's annoying, useless audio logs. Why did they bother when they clearly were in terrible danger? Each audio log I find is more irrelevant and boring than the last." And finally, one of the groups of characters you have to join your faction in this game are the Goth Kids. And when you go to them, they make you do a series of things to have them join you. And at one point, the lead Goth Kid character says to you, "If you want to prove that you're not a conformist, then you have to look exactly like we do." All right, there you have it. Those are three quotes from the very funny South Park Stick of Truth game. Let us know on our social media, again, at Bros Boss Battles on X and Instagram, or on our website, brothersandbossbattles.com, what you think is funniest. All right, back to the episode. All right, we're back. And we've discussed a lot of the South Park Stick of Truth game. We don't want to leave without talking about a little bit on the story and the plot of the game. We won't, so again, for the 10th and final time, there will be spoilers, particularly in this next section. We won't go into every detail. We want you to be able to enjoy it when you play, hear the jokes for the first time, see most of the gameplay. But just generally speaking, and then my brothers can add anything if they want, but you start off as a new kid in town. You just moved to South Park. You don't speak at all. So your character is silent pretty much the whole game. You wind up finding out that the kids in South Park, all the kids in South Park, are playing this RPG game, which I guess is referred as LARPing, as Tom said before. But so you're playing in real life, but it's an RPG type game, right?
I think it stands for live action role playing game.
Right, exactly. And I have heard that before, but I just, wanted to make sure I was using it perfectly correct. Um, anyway, so, seemingly, you first you start off with on Cartman's team, and the theme of this LARP that they're playing is sort of medieval. It's like Cartman and his faction are the humans, the Kyle and Stan and their faction are the elves, and they have this eternities long struggle to hold the stick of truth, which grants immense power to whatever faction holds it. So that's what they're fighting over in this game. And you become a part of that, being torn between the two sides and who you're gonna join with and all of that. It starts to take on bigger, in South Park fashion. That's like the setup of the game, but then it gets bigger than that, where this alien spaceship crashes into the town, and the officials keep saying it's going to be the site of a new Taco Bell, to try to appease all of the townspeople, and clearly that's not true. And you sort of uncover the truth of what's really happening as the game goes on. And as we mentioned before, you visit a lot of the South Park, the South Park places, a lot of the South Park faithful. You go to Canada for a brief period, so it's chock full of South Park content, and down to very minor collectibles to the main portion of the characters you meet and the game. So I guess it's fair to say we'll leave it at that as far as the story and plot is concerned. But and this is an important point. It's basically like watching an hour, well, not an hour, a very long South Park episode. And I say that in like the best, in the best way. But it's I think it took me about I'm gonna pull up my PlayStation app, but I think I've played this for around 15 hours. It takes a little less than that to beat the game because I did kind of go back and just yeah, I have 15 hours played on this according to the PlayStation app, but that was with going back a couple of times just to try to clean up some collectibles and just get refamiliarize myself with the game before we came on the podcast to discuss it. You guys have
I
anything to
don't
add
know.
to that?
I don't. Well, in terms of like stats and stuff,
No,
I don't.
well, the story, if you the plot, if you think it should anything should be added, or just yeah, your experience.
No, I mean you did good on the story. I mean, obviously there's a lot more that we're not gonna go through that we don't need to go through. Um, just on like the jokes and stuff. Like I'm just thinking back now. There's dozens of like hilarious things that I'm not exactly remembering. So
Yeah,
it's not just the few that we mentioned. Then as far as my stats, I don't remember exactly how long it took me. I didn't write that down. I think it was probably a little less than the 15 hours. And I don't know if you guys uh, wrote down or made note of how many friends you had at the end, but I had 94.
I didn't.
Nor I. But yeah, I mean, I think my playtime was around that too, similar to you guys, probably a little less than 15 hours.
I think there's a trophy slash achievement for friending everyone that you can
Yeah,
friend.
more popular than John Lennon.
Oh, is that that's what it's called?
I
Yeah.
think so. That's the one for getting, I think half of them is the trophy for getting half the friends, or some lesser percentage than 100%. But anyway, that one's called more popular than Jesus.
Jesus,
That,
yeah, yeah, that's funny. For those that don't know, it's a reference to John Lennon's quote saying that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus. So I think that about does it. Should we do our final thoughts and recommendations?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'll go first.
All right then.
This maybe is a boring conclusion, but basically, if you like South Park or love South Park, you should play this game. If you don't like South Park or never got into it or never seen an episode of South Park, you're not going to enjoy the game. I don't think the game itself is just too, I don't know, for lack of a better word, easy. And I think,
Rudimentary.
yeah, yeah, that is a better word. And like all of our hours we were just talking about were basically the same, more or less. Like it wasn't noteworthy because I just feel like anybody who plays this game is it's going to take them essentially the same amount of time because there's not a lot of skill or not a lot of strategy that can make you complete it faster because it's quite easy. Um, having said that, I like South Park, so I enjoyed the game and it was fun to play through. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I'll go next. So as I mentioned when I was just briefly discussing the plot, it really is like it's like a very long South Park episode. So being that, in game form. So in being that, if you like South Park, even moderately, because I'm not a huge South Park fan. But even if you're, moderately a South Park fan, I think I would recommend playing this because it's really funny. It's very true to the show. And honestly, I think if you're someone who never heard about South Park, if to the extent those people exist. Maybe one of those aliens from the game or something. But um, maybe give it a shot. It's a fun little easy, not too long RPG. And maybe you'll find that you like the humor, or you think it's funny, or you like the RPG elements of it. The one probably group of people that I would say don't play this is if you don't if you like affirmatively don't like South Park. If you either find it offensive or you just don't find it funny at all, then you're probably better off staying away from the game, because it's not like the RPG of the century. And the main thrust of this game that makes it great to people who like it is really the plot and the jokes. And if you're not going to like that, then I wouldn't waste the 12, 13 hours. But that's my recommendation and my final thoughts. Tom, why don't you finish us off?
Yeah, so I have similar opinions, but just to reiterate, yeah. So I mean, if you're a fan of South Park and haven't played this game, then I would say definitely give it a go. Even if you're not the biggest fan of RPGs, like we mentioned throughout the episode, it's pretty accessible. Even if you're not a big RPG player. And then if you're not necessarily a South Park fan, but you are a fan of this particular brand of comedy, I still think it's worth playing because it's very, you'll find it funny and you'll be laughing a lot throughout the game. And then, yeah, I mean, again, if South Park is just not your cup of tea, then don't bother playing that. Like, even if you're the biggest RPG fan, you probably won't enjoy this game if you don't enjoy South Park. So yeah, definitely that. But I mean, me personally, I found this game to be a joy to play as a kind of moderate South Park fan. I'm not the hugest, you know, fan as we covered earlier, but um, yeah, I was always looking forward to playing this game, and yeah, hopefully we'll get the chance to check out the sequel at some point.
All right, there you have it. Another successful episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown. We thank you for listening. We discussed South Park, The Stick of Truth, the first in our games of the genre 90s cartoon-based games. Visit us on our social media on X and Instagram at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. Visit our website at brothersandbossbattles.com and check out this podcast wherever you get your podcast, and please subscribe. Until next time, take care, everyone.